guys, and welcome to the second part of my Warlock Affliction guide. Because this video was pretty long, I had to divide it actually into 3 parts, so there is a part after this. In the second part, this guide, what happens is, and what is explained, are things from my macros to the add-ons I use, the demonstrations of my add-ons, details of my macros, why you should use them, why it's good to have them, flasks, potions, when to use volcanic potions, when you should be using your cooldowns and when not to use your cooldowns, a little bit of single target DPS, and explanations of Dark Intent. The part 3 of the video has information on multi-dotting and execution phase at 25%. Enjoy. Before we continue, I just want to inform you that none of my gear has spirit on it, and if you are a warlock with spirit on your gear, get rid of it and exchange it for a piece that is a caster's item, not a healing item. This is said because spirit does not increase your mana regen, it does not give you hit, it does not give you anything. It's like using resilience in PvE. You're not getting hit by a player, and you're certainly not regenning non-combatic mana that you can't even regen in battle. And if you do run out of mana, we have a ability called Life Tap, which is why I told you get the glyph, and you're talented for it. Now, for your pet, it doesn't matter if it's raining or shining, all day or day, you want your Fel Hunter. It's your man's best friend. It doesn't matter if you're fighting Ragnaros or you just want to kill rabbits. Fel Hunter is the way to go. Now, moving to add-ons. The 2 add-ons I do recommend you to get, besides Recount, so you can keep an eye on what you're doing, and DBM, would be Tell Me When, which is this box right here, and then Button Timers, which is this right here. I'll demonstrate how Button Timers works and Tell Me When at the same time. This shows you when something's up, so if I use Haunt, it disappears. Okay, but Button Timers tells me how many seconds it has before it runs out, and how many seconds it has before it gets off a cooldown. And it also pops up here. Now, the reason why I have 2 of these is because I can see this better, and if I'm in a fight and I'm tunneling, you should be using Haunt on cooldown. I'll go over that during rotations. And it's just like, okay, green thing, it shouldn't be there, so I should press it. It's, easy. Same thing with my trinket, my Fel Guard, doesn't matter. Alright guys, moving on to Dark Intent, cooldowns, potions, and foods. I'm going to break that down for you. Dark Intent, guys, is a buff we have. It's a self buff, and it's given to a ally. What Dark Intent does, it increases your haste by 3%. I'm just trying to find it, I'm bad. And also, if you give it to somebody who periodically crit, it will give you even more haste. So if I gave it to a druid, besides the 3% haste we both already get, he will get more haste when I periodically crit, and I will get more haste when he periodically heals. Any type of dot or hot that crits will affect the extra buff. So if you're wondering who should I give it to, you can always Google a list, but the 5 main classes I always watch out for would be Wrestle Druids, Feral Druids, Boomkins, Shadow Priests, and, believe it or not, Survival Hunters. Trust me, Survival Hunters crit periodically a lot. Alright. And for some unknown reason, let's say you're by yourself, give it to your Fel Hunter. He's not going to periodically crit, but he has 3% haste, so he attacks a little bit faster, and you do too. Now then, moving on to cooldowns, guys. Cooldowns always use on, whenever it's up. Let's Demon Soul. Okay, when I open up, dudes, I'm going to go over rotations in a bit, but I'd like to use Demon Soul after I get 3 stacks of Shadow's Embraced. So now I feel comfortable. Of course, I should have my Crystal Elements up. Pop Demon Soul. Bam, there you go. Also, I have a trinket called Rune of Zeph, and that's another thing that I like to pop with Demon Soul. You want to use your trinkets on cooldown as soon as possible, at the beginning of the fight, in the middle of the fight. Basically, at the beginning of the fight, use it. The second it's up, use it again. Just make sure when you use your trinkets or your cooldowns, you're not going to be moving. Like, for instance, it's useless to run up in Beth and pop all your CDs, because Beth is just going to fly up, and for about 10 seconds there's going to be no mobs that you face. So you just wasted your trinkets and cooldowns. But when she comes down in final phase, she has nowhere to run or hide, and that's when you use everything, and that's when you keep on using everything. So you have to know and understand the fight before you get good at cooldowns. You don't ever want to use a cooldown knowing you have to move in 5 seconds and it's going to be unavoidable movement, which then wastes your trinket, wastes your cooldown, and brings down your DPS. Now then, moving on to potions. The potions you should be using is Draconic Mind. It's the 1 hour flask that gives you 300 intellect. You also should use a Volcanic Potion. If you don't know what pre-potting is, guys, if you use a Volcanic Potion in a fight, it has a cooldown and it won't let you drink another one during the fight. But if you drink a Volcanic Potion before the tank pulls, like let's say it says pulling in 5, 4, 3, 2. On 2, drink your Volcanic Potion. The second he pulls, it won't register as you've drunk it in combat. So you have 23 seconds left on a 1,200 intellect bonus, and it's the beginning of the fight, and you know, like I said, you get 3 stacks of Shadow Embrace and you pop your cooldowns. By the time you get 3 stacks of Shadow Embrace, you have 14 seconds left on your Volcanic Potion, you have your Demon Soul and your Rune of Zealth up, and you're just blowing stuff up. So remember, guys, pre-pot, so tell your tank if he's not already doing it, please give me a countdown, drink your Volcanic Potion at 2 seconds or 1 second, bam, he pulls, you still can use it after it gets off a cooldown. It's like a 25-second cooldown. But then once you use it again in combat, you can't use it until the fight is over. That's pre-potting if you don't know. Moving on to food, you should be well fed, which it's different for, you know, different kinds of foods. But if you have that lobster mana, you know, that lobster buffet crap, it gives you 90 intellect and 90 stamina. If you don't, you can get the little fish heads from AH, or if you cook yourself, or the Goblin Barbecue from engineering. Just make sure that you have somebody in your guild or your raid or in your party that, you know, has that. That's an extra 90 intellect that you could be having to your name. Now, before I move on to rotations, guys, I want to go over macros. Welcome to the macro section of my video. I'm going to go over the 3 macros that I have that are useful, and if you wish, you can use them. I'll put them in the description box below. For the first macro, it's called Agony. What Agony is, it's /assist, and the target equals add-on, which is my Fellhunter's name. For if you want this macro to work, all you have to do is replace the name add-on with the name of your Fellhunter. It also works for tanks, but because you might not always have the same tank, but you always have the same pet, I put my pet's name instead. So, with this macro, I put my pet on passive, but I tell him to attack. This is because if I attack this guy, and let's say this guy is on the other side of Africa, my Fellhunter won't fly to Africa to attack him. He will continue DPSing the guy in the USA, and that would just buy me more DPS because my Fellhunter he's not stopping at all. And also it helps me with my next macro. My next macro is a soul swap macro, and how it works is if you have one person set to your focus, you just dot one person up, you press the soul swap, hold alt, and it soul swaps your macro. And then because of my Agony macro, I click that and now I targeted that person. So without having to find out where they are, without having to lift up my hand and move my camera and then click on the target while avoiding traps or avoiding fire, I can just simply press buttons and I get all the targets I need. The only time that you would actually need to click on the target would be when you have to re-soul swap. The last macro I have to share with you is a macro that pops everything I have, my Demon Soul, my Trinket, and my Volcanic Potion all at once. Of course, I have another one that's the same thing, just without the Volcanic Potion, so I don't risk using one when I don't want to use it. Well then, on to the final part of this long tutorial, guide, whatever the hell you want to call it, rotation. Alright then, let's start with a single target rotation. the first thing you want to do is start off with Shadow Bolt. I tell my pet to attack, followed by a Haunt, Unstable Affliction, Corruption, Bane of Doom, throw up Curse of Elements, spam Shadow Bolt. He just got 3 stacks of Shadow Embrace. It's the beginning of the fight. I pop my cooldowns. My cooldowns are up, 3 stacks of Shadow Embrace, and I'm keeping my dots up while spamming Shadow Bolt. Haunt just came off a cooldown. You use Haunt on cooldown all the time, even if there's still seconds on it. Haunt on cooldown. I like to refresh in my Unstable Affliction after a Haunt or at 3 seconds. So here, Haunt, then Unstable Affliction, then drop some more Shadow Bolts. Now, that's single target. Let's move on to multi-target. Multi-target is extremely easy, but before I explain the one spell that we spam, let me show you this. I just did Corruption. Now I'm going to use my Seed of Corruption. It replaces the Corruption you just did. Now then, when you AoE, the first thing you want to do is throw up Curse of Elements. It just decreases the amount of shadow damage they take. Increases the damage they take, I'm sorry. Soul Burn, Seed of Corruption. It explodes, everyone gets affected with Corruption, as you can see. Now then, when you use Corruption, Seed of Corruption it replaces Corruption. So, it doesn't have it anymore. So the best thing to do is you want to just tab target. Like if you know someone has Corruption, try not to use it on them, but use it on the tunes that doesn't have Corruption on them. That way you can keep your dot up, and also your Curse of Elements is working better because it has a dot to also work with. Now, the only exception to this is if you are in melee range. The other spell that you do use on cooldown would be Shadow Flame. Shadow Flame is a dot, so it's good, and it's an AoE. But you see how I just moved up front to use it? That's a DPS loss. Don't do that. And that's also for single target as well that I failed to mention. Use Shadow Flame if you have to move and the guy's in range, or if you're in melee range, use Shadow Flame on cooldown. That's the best thing to do. Also, I'm going to explain about multi-dotting and the rules of Fell Flame and Soulfire. That was part 2 to the Affliction Warlock Guide. Hope you guys liked it and learned something from it. Part 3 has multi-dotting, buying time, and drain soul rotations, and also how to use Soulfire and Fell Flame. I highly recommend you guys to see that video because it's detailed on how to use my macros, and it can show you exactly how much time you can buy in a fight. If you can get this down, you can increase your total damage by at least 1,000,000. So good luck and take care. Hope you guys check that video out.